The warning line. They discovered the monitoring stations in the Kuiper Belt on a Tuesday. Unremarkable. Really, just another day of routine deep space scans until the anomalies appeared on the screens at Farpoint Observatory. Strange energy signatures where none should exist, artificial structures floating silently in the void beyond Neptune. Earth had been watched for decades and no one had known. Admiral Helena Chen received the report in her underground office at the United Earth Defense Command. At 53, she'd spent her career preparing for a moment humanity had long theorized would come. First contact. Only this wasn't first contact. This was finding out someone had broken into your house and installed cameras while you slept. How many? She asked, eyes fixed on the holographic projection showing the outer solar system. 17 confirmed stations, replied her second-in-command, Colonel Adebayo, all positioned along orbital paths that maximize coverage of Earth and Mars. The technology is, well, it's beyond anything we've seen. Chen nodded slowly. The fact that they'd detected the stations at all was the only silver lining. 10 years ago, Earth wouldn't have had the capability. But the quantum resonance breakthrough of 2057 had accelerated humanity's technological development at a pace no one predicted. Suddenly, humanity could see further, detect more, understand deeper. The stations had always been there. Now, Earth could finally see its watchers. What's their power source? She asked. Unknown. They appear to be drawing energy through some form of dimensional tapping we can't replicate. Preliminary analysis suggests they've been operational for at least 30 years. Chen's jaw tightened, and transmitting all that time. Reporting on us. Yes, Admiral. 3 days later, the Security Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from all Earth nations gathered in Geneva as Admiral Chen laid out what they knew and what they didn't. These stations weren't placed by some benevolent observers, she concluded. They're strategic. Surveillance. Military intelligence gathering. Someone out there is studying us like we study potential adversaries. The Chinese representative leaned forward. How do we know they haven't placed more than just watching devices? Weapons, perhaps. We don't, Chen admitted. We're scanning constantly, but if there are weapons platforms using similar technology, we might not detect them until they're active. The room fell silent. Humanity had long dreamed of contact with alien civilizations. Now that dream had morphed into something darker, the realization that first contact had already happened, and it wasn't an exchange of greetings but covert surveillance. The Brazilian representative broke the silence. What do you recommend, Admiral? Chen had prepared for this question. We need to send a message, clear, unmistakable, and immediate. Whoever placed these stations needs to understand that Earth is not unaware, not defenseless, and not willing to be monitored without consent. A message. The Russian delegate scoffed. To whom? We don't even know who's receiving the data. We will soon. Chen gestured, and a new hologram appeared above the table. We've identified subtle tachyon pulses emanating from the largest station. They're directional, pointing to a specific area of space, roughly 40 light-years from Earth in the direction of the Epsilon Eridani system. We can send our own message along the same channel. She didn't mention that this capability had only existed for 18 months, another quantum leap that would have been impossible prior to the resonance event. Some advancements were still classified even from this group. After 10 hours of debate, the Security Council reached a decision. Earth would announce its presence, not with a greeting, but with a warning. Admiral Chen was given full authority to execute what would later be known as the Line Declaration. 3 weeks later, Earth was ready. The message had been crafted, translated into mathematical language that would transcend any linguistic barriers, and loaded into the most powerful transmitter humanity had ever built, a massive array constructed in secret on the far side of the moon. Chen stood in the Lunar Command Center, watching the final preparations. Colonel Adebayo approached, datapad in hand. Latest scans show increased activity at 4 of the monitoring stations, he reported. They may have detected our preparations. Good, Chen replied. Then they're already paying attention. At precisely 700 UTC, the lunar array activated. The message fired along the exact path of the alien transmissions, a targeted communication impossible to miss for whoever waited at the other end. Earth wasn't just responding. It was demonstrating capability, precision, and resolve. The message itself was simple. To the civilization monitoring Earth through unauthorized stations in our solar system, we have detected your surveillance platforms. Your presence in our system without prior communication or permission is considered a violation of our sovereignty. All monitoring stations must be deactivated and removed within 30 Earth days. Any vessel entering our system from this point forward will be challenged. Any hostile action will be met with proportional response. Earth is not open to unauthorized observation or intrusion. This is our only warning. The message, repeated for 12 hours, transmitted in pulses of increasing strength that would be impossible to dismiss as natural phenomena. Then Earth waited. The response came faster than anyone anticipated. Just 11 days later, 3 vessels emerged from what appeared to be artificially generated wormholes at the edge of the Kuiper Belt. They moved with impossible speed, bypassing the outer planets in hours rather than months. Their destination, the monitoring stations. They're not here for diplomatic talks, Adebayo observed as they tracked the ship's movements. Admiral Chen nodded. No, they're securing their assets. The Security Council convened again, this time in permanent emergency session. The vessels, sleek, crystalline structures that seemed to bend light around them, ignored all attempts at communication. They simply moved from station to station, appearing to download data or perhaps performing upgrades. On the 14th day after the warning line was sent, a 4th ship appeared. Larger than the others, it positioned itself between the orbits of Jupiter and Saturn and broadcast its own message. The translation algorithms worked for hours before producing something humans could understand. To the developing species of the 3rd planet, your system falls within the observational jurisdiction of the Meridian Confederacy's Expansion Division. Monitoring of pre-expansion civilizations is standard protocol and not subject to local approval. Your technological advancement has been noted but remains insufficient for protected status. Remove your primitive defenses from our monitoring stations. Further interference will necessitate corrective measures. This communication constitutes a courtesy not typically extended to Level 2 civilizations. The arrogance stunned even the most cynical members of the Security Council, but Admiral Chen had anticipated something like this. For 3 years, she had led the development of Earth's defense initiative, knowing that humanity's window of anonymity was closing as its technological footprint expanded. They've shown their hand, she told the Council. They believe we're primitive, defenseless, and easily intimidated. That's an advantage. The Indian representative looked unconvinced. An advantage. They have interstellar travel, wormhole technology, and who knows what weapons capabilities. What exactly is our advantage? Chen allowed herself a small smile. They underestimate us, and they don't know what we've been building. The quantum resonance event hadn't just accelerated humanity's detection capabilities. It had revolutionized energy systems, material science, and weapons technology. The QRE had been Earth's great leap forward, a sudden, unexplained synchronization of quantum fields that had unlocked scientific understanding decades ahead of projected timelines. Most critically, it had given birth to the Silence Protocol, a defensive system unlike anything humanity had theorized before the event. We activate silence, Chen said simply. Now, across Earth, deep underground facilities hummed to life. In orbit, satellites that had appeared to be standard communications relays reconfigured themselves. On the Moon, arrays that had been disguised as scientific instruments revealed their true purpose. When the alien ship fired its first weapon, a concentrated beam of what appeared to be exotic particles aimed at Earth's largest communication hub in Australia, the Silence Protocol activated automatically. The beam never reached its target. 10,000 kilometers from Earth, It simply stopped. Froze in space, suspended in a bubble of distorted space-time, where physics itself seemed to pause. In Lunar Command, Admiral Chen watched the readings with satisfaction. Send our response. Earth's message was brief. Your hostility has been noted and neutralized. We will now demonstrate our defensive capability. This is not a negotiation. The silence expanded. Generated from hundreds of points across Earth's orbit, the field propagated outward at impossible speed. When it reached the alien vessel, the ship's energy systems flickered and died. Its crystalline structure darkened as it drifted, powerless. The technology wasn't destruction-based. It was something far more elegant. The silence created a field where certain laws of physics simply paused. Energy couldn't flow. Signals couldn't transmit. Weapons couldn't fire. It was as if the universe itself had said no to technology within the affected zone. The three smaller vessels attempted to flee, accelerating toward the points where they had emerged. Two made it. The third was caught by the expanding silence and joined its larger companion in powerless drift. For 72 hours, Earth held the ships in technological stasis. During that time, the unified governments prepared. If this was the beginning of a war, humanity would not be caught unprepared again. On the fourth day, Earth contracted the silence field around the two disabled ships, allowing minimal power restoration, enough for life support and communication, nothing more. Admiral Chen's next message was transmitted directly to the captive vessels, to the representatives of the Meridian Confederacy. Your ships remain under our control. Your monitoring stations have been neutralized. You have witnessed a fraction of Earth's defensive capabilities. We are now prepared to discuss terms of mutual recognition and respect. The alternative is that we expand the silence to include the coordinates your transmissions have been directed toward. We possess the capability. Choose carefully. Hours passed before the response came. When it did, the tone had changed dramatically. Terran Command, we request dialogue. Your technological capabilities have been reassessed. The Confederacy acknowledges the sovereignty of your system pending formal discussions. Please release our vessels as a demonstration of good faith. Admiral Chen read the message twice before allowing herself a moment of satisfaction. They blinked, she murmured. Colonel Adebayo nodded. What now, Admiral? Chen looked at the holographic display, showing the disabled alien ships suspended in Earth's grasp. Now we negotiate. From strength. Across Earth, civilians remained largely unaware of how close they had come to becoming another subjugated world in some vast interstellar empire. News agencies reported only that anomalous signals had been detected and were being investigated. The truth would come later, when humanity was ready. But in the deep places where Earth's defenders worked, there was no celebration yet, only grim determination. The Meridian Confederacy had blinked, but they had not surrendered. This was just the opening move in a game whose rules humanity was only beginning to learn. And Admiral Helena Chen knew better than most. The game had barely begun. The voice of thunder. The delegation from the Meridian Confederacy arrived exactly 1 month after the confrontation. Their ship, a sleek diplomatic vessel rather than a warship, was permitted to approach Earth only after surrendering its weapons systems to silence field monitoring. It landed at the newly constructed neutral ground facility in Antarctica, far from civilian populations. Admiral Chen watched through the observation window as the aliens emerged. They were not what anyone had expected. Tall, crystalline beings with translucent bodies that pulsed with internal light. They moved with fluid grace despite appearing to be made of living glass. Fascinating, murmured Dr. Livian, the xenobiologist standing beside Chen. Their biology must be silicon-based rather than carbon. Those patterns of light, they could be a form of communication, or perhaps their equivalent of a circulatory system. Chen nodded absently, more concerned with security than biology. Any weapons? None detected, replied the security chief. But their bodies themselves may be capable of things our scanners can't identify. Keep the localized silence generators on standby, Chen ordered. If anything happens, freeze them where they stand. The meeting that followed made history, the first official diplomatic contact between humanity and an extraterrestrial civilization. The Confederacy representatives spoke through translation devices that converted their crystalline light pulses into sound waves humans could understand. "We acknowledge our miscalculation," began the lead delegate, who had introduced itself as Sphere of Endless Light. "The Confederacy has catalogued thousands of developing worlds. Never have we encountered one that advanced so rapidly or unpredictably. Perhaps you should reconsider your monitoring practices," Chen replied coolly. "Perhaps." The alien's body flickered with patterns that the translation device didn't interpret. "Your silence technology is troubling. It resembles prohibited techniques from the ancient wars. How did your species develop such capabilities independently?" Chen had anticipated this question. The truth that the quantum resonance event had been unexplained, and possibly not of human origin, was Earth's most closely guarded secret. "We evolved differently," she answered simply. "Now let's discuss the terms of our future relationship." The negotiations lasted for weeks. The Confederacy, it emerged, was a vast collective of nearly 300 spacefaring species governing over 12,000 inhabited worlds. Earth represented something unprecedented. A young species with technology that should have been beyond their developmental stage. What the Confederacy delegates didn't know was that Earth was planning for time. While diplomatic talks proceeded on the surface, beneath it, humanity raced to expand its defensive capabilities. The silence protocol had worked once, but Admiral Chen knew better than to rely on a single advantage. Colonel Adebayo coordinated the Global Defense Initiative from his mobile command center, moving between continents to oversee the installation of new silence generators. When he met with Chen between negotiation sessions, his reports were encouraging but cautious. "We've doubled our coverage," he explained over secure channels. "The entire inner system can now be protected. But there's a problem. The power requirements are immense. If they come in force, we might not be able to maintain the field long enough." Chen frowned. "Then we need to make sure they don't come in force. Or we need a more efficient system. The scientists are working on it. But there's something else." Adebayo lowered his voice despite the secure line. "Our deep space monitoring detected communications between the diplomatic vessel and multiple points outside our system. They're reporting back to more than just their central government. Military contacts. Almost certainly. And some of the transmissions contain detailed scans of our defenses." Chen's expression hardened. "They're preparing for another approach." She was right. 3 days later, the negotiations suddenly stalled when the Confederacy delegates insisted on observational rights within Earth's atmosphere, effectively demanding permission to place monitoring devices on the planet itself. When Chen flatly refused, the lead delegate's crystal body pulsed with intense patterns that overloaded the translator. "We've detected your expansion of defensive systems," it finally said through the device. "This suggests hostility rather than diplomatic intent." "Self-defense is not hostility," Chen replied. "Your unannounced surveillance of our world without consent was the initial hostile act." The meeting ended abruptly, and within hours, the delegation had returned to their ship and departed, ostensibly to consult with Confederate authorities. They never returned for further talks. Instead, 18 days later, Earth's long-range detection systems reported a massive distortion in space at the edge of the solar system. The Confederacy had returned, not with diplomats, but with a fleet. 47 ships, each larger than anything humans had constructed in space, emerged from sequential wormholes. They formed a battle sphere and began a measured advance toward the inner planets. The Security Council convened an emergency session. Fear dominated the discussion until Admiral Chen took the floor. "This is the response I predicted," she said calmly. "They can't accept a young species with advanced technology existing outside their control. It threatens their hierarchy, their entire system of categorizing and subjugating developing worlds." "Can we stop them?" asked the German representative, voicing the question on everyone's mind. Chen's answer was measured, not conventionally. "Their fleet outmatches anything we could deploy in terms of firepower or numbers. But we don't need to match them. We need to make the cost of conflict too high." She outlined the defense strategy developed over the previous weeks. The silence protocol would be deployed selectively rather than as a system-wide shield. Key Confederate vessels would be targeted, immobilized, and then addressed individually. "Divide and isolate," the British representative nodded. "Psychological warfare." "Exactly," Chen confirmed. "And we have one more advantage they don't expect." While the Confederacy fleet advanced, human ships, far smaller but nimble, deployed to positions throughout the asteroid belt and beyond. They carried no weapons in the conventional sense. Instead, each was equipped with a miniaturized silence generator and a powerful communication array. The Confederate commander sent the expected ultimatum when their fleet reached the orbit of Mars: surrender Earth's defensive technology, accept Confederate authority, and receive protected status within their hierarchy, or face immediate military action. Earth's response shocked them. Instead of a transmission from a central authority, hundreds of signals activated simultaneously from across the system. Each asteroid belt vessel broadcast the same message, creating a sphere of communication that couldn't be blocked. To the Meridian Confederacy fleet: "You have entered sovereign Terran space against explicit warning. You face not a single defense force, but a unified species prepared to protect its freedom at any cost. We will not fire the first shot, but we will demonstrate what awaits any aggressor." At Admiral Chen's command, the silence protocol activated, not as a system-wide field, but as precision strikes against the three largest Confederate vessels, including the apparent command ship. Their systems died instantly, leaving them drifting and powerless amid their still active companions. What followed was another demonstration. From Earth and lunar bases, focused beams targeted 5 more Confederate ships, not to disable but to communicate. The beams carried not energy weapons but data, detailed scans of every Confederate vessel, including crew compositions, weapon systems, and even individual command structures. The message was clear: we see everything. We know everything. We can disable any of you at will. For 72 tense hours, the situation remained frozen in this state. The Confederate fleet, missing its command structure, did not advance further but refused to retreat. Earth maintained its defensive posture, keeping the disabled ships in stasis while allowing life support systems to function. Then came the unexpected development. One of the smaller Confederate vessels broke formation and approached Earth alone, broadcasting on all frequencies. "This is Sub-Commander Radiant Corps of the 3rd Exploration Division. I request direct communication with Terran Command on behalf of those who question the Confederacy's aggression." Admiral Chen, after consultation with the Security Council, agreed to the communication. What emerged was surprising: evidence of a deep division within the Confederacy itself. Many among our ranks questioned the wisdom of this confrontation. The sub-commander's translated voice explained, "Your species has demonstrated not only unexpected capability but remarkable restraint. You could have destroyed our disabled vessels, but chose not to. This suggests a civilization worthy of respect, not subjugation." Over the next several days, a remarkable shift occurred. More Confederate vessels broke formation to communicate independently with Earth. The uniform aggression fractured into a spectrum of perspectives, some still hostile, others curious, and a growing number advocating for withdrawal and legitimate diplomatic engagement. What humanity didn't realize until later was that their broadcast strategy had reached not just the fleet commanders, but every crew member on every ship. The psychological impact had been precisely what Admiral Chen had hoped for: doubt, division, and eventually, dissent. On the 7th day of the standoff, the Confederate fleet began to withdraw. Not in defeat, they insisted, but to reassess the classification and approach to the Terran system. As the last ships disappeared back through their wormholes, Colonel Adebayo joined Admiral Chen in the command center. "Is this victory?" he asked quietly. Chen watched the final ships vanish from the tracking system. "No, it's a beginning." She was right. In the years that followed, humanity's relationship with the Confederacy evolved into something unprecedented in their hierarchical structure. A relationship between equals despite Earth's younger status. Other species within the Confederacy, long categorized and controlled based on their development stage, took notice. The Silence Protocol was never used as a weapon of aggression. Earth maintained it purely as a defensive system, even as humanity began its careful expansion to nearby star systems. But its existence served as a constant reminder. Underestimate humanity at your peril. Admiral Helena Chen eventually became Earth's first ambassador to the Confederate Assembly, where she worked to reform the very classification system that had led to the confrontation. Under her guidance, a new principle was established in galactic law, the recognition doctrine, which acknowledged that advancement paths could vary between species and that technological achievement alone was not the measure of civilization. On the 10th anniversary of the standoff, now commemorated as Sovereignty Day across Earth and its colonies, Chen stood at the newly constructed monument to First Contact in Geneva. Beside her stood a crystalline figure, sphere of endless light, now the Confederate ambassador to Earth. "Your species continues to surprise us," the alien observed, its body pulsing with patterns that humans had learned to recognize as thoughtful consideration. "Many feared you would use your advantage to carve out an empire of your own." Chen smiled slightly. "That's not our path. We just wanted what every sentient species deserves, the right to determine our own future without interference. A simple desire that changed the structure of a galactic civilization," the ambassador replied. "Perhaps that is the most surprising outcome of all." As they looked up at the monument, a symbolic representation of Earth's first transmission into the void, neither mentioned what both knew. Throughout the galaxy, other young civilizations were beginning to send their own messages, inspired by the species that had drawn a line in the void and said simply, "This far, no further." The silence that had once been Earth's defense had become a voice heard across the stars.